Hello, welcome to Microfiche Microphone. I'm Micah, and in this channel we look at microfiche from very long past newspaper articles that are no longer under copyright. So just to let you know, I do have permission to read the whole article, and we are discussing it according to our modern perspective. So that's what we do here. Today in our microfiche time capsule, we are looking at an article from the London magazine from 1768 in January. So this article is called The American Combination Considered. Interesting. Be aware that there are some strange looking letters because in 1768 they used a letter that looks like an F but is actually an S. Okay, so be aware of that. It is a little confusing as you read it, and you will see what I mean. So let's dive right in. Mr. Urban. So this particular newspaper was by somebody who's named Severus Urban. I don't think that was his real name. I'm pretty sure it was a nom de plume. So, Mr. Urban, your anonymous correspondent, see volume whatever, doesn't matter, I'm not going to look, has declaimed upon a subject which by an unhappy combination of ignorance and obstinacy has become very like a bone of contention between the young and the old provinces of this great commonwealth. I thought this particular article was quite interesting because it is a perspective from pre-Revolutionary War times. So you can see this article is from London, from England, and they are looking at the American colonies. So at the time it was not its own country. It was just before the Revolutionary War. This is 8 years before the signing of the Declaration of Independence. So this, I thought, was a very good perspective from the British side to see how they felt about what was going on in the British colonies. I also love the language, by the way, ignorance and obstinacy. So, it seldom happens in disputes of any kind, but that one side or the other lay the foundations of their arguments on error. It happens more particularly so with your angry correspondent. So, this correspondent is angry about what's going on. I'm not sure on which side they're on right now. For whose information I will beg leave to give a short sketch of the British Constitution. Okay, the British state, or empire, consists of several islands and other distant countries asunder in different parts of the globe, but all united in allegiance to one prince, and to the common law, Scotland excepted, as it exists in the old provinces or mother country before the colonies or new provinces were formed. So basically, I'm trying to help you with the language here a little bit because it can be a little hard. They're saying that all of the British colonies are supposed to be loyal to the prince, who I believe was George III, was it not? I mean, that's the king. The prince, with a select parliament or assembly, make the legislative power of and for each province within itself. Where vicinity make it convenient, several islands and provinces were at sundry times consolidated and represented by one parliament, as the Isle of Wight, Cornwall, Wales, Cheshire, Durham, and Scotland, by which means all Great Britain and its contiguous isles are united, represented in one assembly in Parliament. Okay, so they're saying that they have different pieces of Parliament that represent different places, but if you listen to that list, they're all places in the British Isles. So, Isle of Wight, Cornwall, Wales, Cheshire, Durham, and Scotland. That's not a very long list. Let me just throw that out there. It has not as yet been thought proper to unite Ireland to the old provinces, though lying very near, nor any of the provinces of America which lie at a great distance. But notwithstanding this state of separate assemblies, the allegiance of the distant provinces to the crown will remain forever unshaken, while they enjoy the rights of Englishmen, that is, with the consent of their sovereign and right of legislation. I'm having trouble. We'll get it. The right of legislation, each for themselves, for this puts them on an exact level in this respect with their fellow subjects in the old provinces, and better than this they could not be by any change in their power. Yeah, I'm not sure why he's upset by this. So you're saying that Ireland and America, if you allowed them representation in Parliament, would be on par with Cornwall and Wales? So, I don't understand why they're upset by that. That's okay. Moving on. But if the old provinces should often exercise the right of making laws for the new, they would probably grow as restless as the Corsicans, when they perceived that they were no longer fellow subjects, but the subjects of subjects. I agree. Why would they not be upset by that? Okay. To illustrate this matter by a comparison, should it happen, through the revolutions of time, that some future king should make choice for Ireland and for his seat of government, and that the Parliament of that kingdom, with his Majesty's concurrence, should assume the right of taxing the people of England, would the people of England quietly acquiesce and implicitly pay obedience to laws made by virtue of such an assumed right? And yet, as there is no law in being to prevent his Majesty from making any part of his dominions the seat of his government, the case is by no means foreign to the present question. Okay, so he's saying that the king can choose to tax his people, and that is his right. Yes? Is the king's right to tax his people okay? Sure? Like, should you quietly agree or not? Like, okay, yeah, we get it. However, if you are taxing the people that have representation in Parliament, then they also have a say in that. They also have a say in which direction the taxes are getting spent in. So, I don't understand this argument. This doesn't make sense to me. Okay, let's move on. The laws made here to tax the Americans affect them as a distinct body, in which the lawmakers are in no manner whatever comprehended, whereas the laws made to tax Great Britain affect alike every member who gives his concurrence to such law, and hence arises the essential difference between real and virtual representation so much agitated. So, I'm sorry for the pause, but honestly, that's... wow, seriously? Virtual representation, huh? Like, it's not like they had Zoom back then. Yeah, no. You don't do virtual representation. Like, that's weird. Okay. So here's our correspondent's opinion. Your correspondent observes that we are loaded with 130 millions of debt, great part of which was contracted by defending the Americans, and therefore that they are bound in gratitude, etc. Were this argument of weight, and were the right of taxing to follow the obligation of defense, we have expended more than the whole sum on various occasions in defense of the balance of power on the continent. Will your correspondent for that reason argue that Great Britain has a right of taxing her friends in Germany? Hanover, for instance, was formerly said to have cost this nation immense sums for its defense, and Hanover is a district under the obedience of the King of Great Britain. Will it follow that we have any right to tax Hanover, or that Hanover, in gratitude for the sums we have expended on her behalf, should implicitly give up her ancient rights? Oh, that's correspondence on the side of the Americans. So they're saying that that the Americans owe them for having defended them. I mean, in a way, you could say that. But I feel like it's a little bit like when you have a child and then you send the child to school and you have to spend money on their school, and then they're like, see, I spent so much money on you, now you owe me. You owe you what? Like, you chose to do that. Because the Americans had no say in what the money was used for, where maybe they would have chosen to use it in a different way. Like, yeah, thank you for defending us with your army, but honestly, we didn't actually ask you to do it because we have no say in Parliament. Yeah? And so then they're comparing that to Hanover, which is a city in Germany. Apparently, they had used some money to defend them. Does anybody know about this? Because I am not aware of this this case. When the British defended Hanover, which was probably a sovereign state at the time. 1768? Like, it must have been before that. I don't know. Does anybody know about 18th century defense of the state of Hanover by the British? Because I'm interested. So please point me in the right direction. I would love to read more on that. All right. Upon the whole, the point in dispute does not depend on gratitude or defense, but on the right of English men to give their own money with their own consent. While the Americans were in possession of that right, or thought themselves in possession of it, every requisition for that purpose by the king or his ministers was cheerfully complied with. But since that right, by the mistaken policy of one man, has been brought in question, murmuring and discontent has succeeded, and every artifice is now practiced to withhold sums levied by a new mode, which has been demanded in the old way, which would have been willingly granted. I am, sir, etc., A.B. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, honestly, they're saying we would have paid your taxes willingly if you had allowed us representation in your parliament. And I don't think that's too much to ask. That's basically what he's saying. I agree. Yeah. So, not too much to ask. And this is kind of the beginning of the Revolutionary War. This is pre-Boston Tea Party. This is pre-Declaration of Independence. This is pre-U.S. Constitution. This is, yeah, a long time ago. Because that was all before that, it was interesting that this correspondent, who was probably in the American colonies at the moment, was able to give this insight and say, dude, we were happy paying the taxes as long as we felt we had a say in it. But now that you've rescinded that say and we no longer have any voice at all in what taxes are spent on and in which way things are going, we're not happy with it anymore. So all we're asking for is representation in Parliament, and I don't think that that's too much to ask if you're paying taxes. I'm just saying. And I really appreciate this perspective, and I think that that makes sense, that this was, as it says at the top of the page, defense of the Americans. So I appreciate that this correspondent is giving that perspective to the British people at the time, just to help them to understand what's going on. So that was our time capsule for today. I'm Micah once again, and thank you for joining us, and we'll see you again next time.